What if Love and Thunder was Thor's final movie, his send-off, just like Endgame was for Cap and Iron Man? What if there was a part of Thor that actually wanted Gorr to win? Today, I'm going to be rewriting Thor Love and Thunder, this time without all of the non-stop corny jokes, screaming goats, paper-thin character arcs, and the lamest possible version of Jane Foster's Mighty Thor. This will be an exploration of Thor's character after the events of the Infinity Saga, while still keeping some of the best parts of the original movie. This is my rewrite of Thor Love and Thunder. First of all, we need to consider where all of our characters are before the movie begins. Fresh off the end of Avengers Endgame, Thor is looking for his place in the universe. He's the god of thunder, but he's not the king of Asgard. He's got no family, no girlfriend, and the Avengers are essentially disassembled. He's spending time with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's not because he's really one of them. The Guardians are very much a found family, and it's clear Thor is just the neighbor who's crashing on their couch. Next, we have Jane Foster. We don't know what Jane's been up to since Thor the Dark World, only that she broke up with Thor, for some reason we're not aware of. She's always been passionate about her career in astrophysics, and is one of the world's leading astronomers, but that was like 10 years ago. What's been going on with her? And the final character we need a little insight on is Valkyrie. She had a passion for serving and protecting Asgard that was snuffed out after Hela murdered the other Valkyries. She was brought back into the fold to help defeat Hela in Ragnarok, and after Thor fell into a depression from the events of the snap, she shouldered much of the responsibilities of running Asgard. After Endgame, she accepted the role of King of New Asgard, as well as the responsibilities that come with it. It was said in some of the promotional material for this film that Valkyrie would be looking for a queen, someone to help her rule New Asgard, but nothing like that ever happened. Okay, with all that set up out of the way, let's begin. Much like in the original, we cold open on Gorr and his daughter stranded in the desert, dying of hunger. Gorr is adamantly praying to the god of their planet to save them. As the two are walking, Gorr's daughter collapses from the heat, and he shouts to the sky, praying that his god would descend and save them. And just as Gorr's cries echo away into space, a dot appears in the clouds above, slowly growing larger and larger, until we see that it's a burning ball of fire hurtling towards them. Gorr tries to pull his daughter away, but the father and child are sent flying as two gods crash into the ground next to them. One of these gods is the one that Gorr worships, Rapu, a glowing golden figure. Everywhere his feet step, lush foliage sprouts up from the dirt. He's battling against the Shadow Lord, a monstrous beast wrapped in a cloak of shifting darkness and wielding a black greatsword. As they battle, Gorr is trying to stay out of their way, their footsteps and strikes shattering the ground beneath him as he scrambles to make it to his daughter, who's lying motionless several yards away. Gorr manages to reach his daughter, but just as he cradles her in his arms, she faints. Behind them, Rapu tears the Shadow Lord in two, winning the fight. As this happens, the Shadow Lord's black essence seeps back into the sword, the Necro Sword, which tumbles to the ground. Gorr looks up in time to see Rapu kick the blade away, clearly afraid of its power. Summoning the last of his strength, Gorr approaches his god in worship. "Please, my lord, embrace my daughter. I know your touch will rejuvenate her with life." But Rapu tells Gorr that there would be no point. As a mortal, she'd just die again in a century anyway. Gorr pleads for help, but the god just shakes his head and begins walking away. As Gorr screams for his god to help, to merely touch her forehead, his daughter dies in his arms. We see Gorr break in a moment of unadulterated grief, of sorrow, of anger, and looking at his daughter's blood staining his hands, he uses it to mark his face. 2 lines simulating streaming tears down his cheeks. He reaches out for the Necro Sword, and it reaches back, black tendrils wrapping around his arm, as a cloak forms around his body. The color seeps from his skin, and he lunges forward, stabbing the golden god in the back. As the blade pierces the god's heart, blackness seeps all over him. A cruel smile crosses Gorr's face, and we cut to the Marvel Studios logo. The first image we see next is Thor opening his eyes. He's floating in some sort of great, colorful storm. All around him, lightning is bursting and crackling, lighting up a sea of shimmering clouds. We hear Thor's thoughts. I have lost my mother, my father, my brother. For years, I lost half the universe. But the fates were kind. I was able to avenge those tragedies. I am Thor Odinson, god of thunder, and rightful heir to the throne of Asgard. But I am not fit for the throne. It may be my birthright, but I was not born to be king. No, I was born for... What was I born for? Why do I keep dreaming? Dreaming of... And across from Thor, in the swirling epicenter of this storm, is a woman. She's obscured by the clouds, but she's reaching out to Thor. As he extends his hand to meet hers, his eyes snap open. This time, Livin' La Vida Loca blares out of an alarm clock. Remember, Thor is with the Guardians right now, and since this is post-Guardians 2, they're still listening to 90s music. We get a short montage of Thor's normal life now, working with the Guardians, helping to save people across the galaxy. He's very good at it, stopping criminals and space pirates, and everything is like a walk in the park for him. But it's clear that as he's helping the Guardians, his mind is somewhere else. He's distracted. This whole sequence can have some of that signature Taika Waititi humor. Maybe there's a weight loss calendar next to his bunk, a shot of him arm wrestling Drax, funny stuff like that. And as we come to the end of our little montage, we get Thor stepping into the Milano as Rocket is explaining the current situation. A cosmic storm has ravaged an entire quadrant of the galaxy. It started small about 5 years ago and grew big enough to affect entire solar systems, before mysteriously disappearing several months ago. The Guardians finally have the bandwidth to help some of these planets, but they have to spread themselves thin to help as many people as possible. Thor points out a distress signal that seems urgent, but it's all the way on the other side of the galaxy, away from where the storm had affected people. Star-Lord tells him they can't make it a priority. They have too many people to help here. Thor is clearly uncomfortable with his suggestion being ignored, and Peter pulls him aside for a quick talk. When Thor met the Guardians, he butted heads with Quill pretty frequently, but lately he's just kind of bumming everyone out. It's clear there's something going on with him, and Quill suggests Thor goes off on his own to check out that distress signal. Maybe do some soul searching, figure out what it is he wants. Thor agrees, says his goodbyes, and summons the Bifrost to travel to the distress call. As he lands on this distant planet in a snowy field, Thor is immediately smacked to the ground by an enormous creature. He's helped up by Sif, of all people, who pulls him away as the beast, Thalagar, takes another swing at him with its gigantic tail. Thalagar is the giant white behemoth that Thor finds dead in both the comic and the original movie, but in this version we get to see them fight. Thalagar has a black scorch mark across its face and is rampaging against Sif. Thor is surprised, as Thalagar is an old friend of his who's usually very docile. Sif says that she heard a report that it was terrorizing a nearby village, and when she found it, it had this strange black mark across its head and wouldn't listen to reason. The two of them work together to battle the creature, Thor calling down lightning as Sif slashes at its legs, but Thalagar manages to catch Sif, biting her arm in its gigantic maw. To save her, with one final strike from Stormbreaker, Thor puts the monster down. Sif tumbles out from Thalagar's mouth, now missing an arm. Thor catches her, and as he starts to patch her up, they get to discuss what just happened. Thalagar was an old friend. Thor notes that he seems to be losing a lot of people lately. Sif asks about Jane, but Thor really doesn't want to talk about her. He instead asks, what happened to Thalagar? Where did this black scorch mark come from? Sif doesn't know, but she intends to find out. Although first, they have a duty to their old friend. The two of them work together to prepare the giant god's body, and Sif finishes stacking a wooden pyre on top of it so Thor can call down lightning, igniting the fire. We zoom in on the lightning as it lights the fire, and this transitions us back to that stormy dream world. We see the woman again, still floating in this cosmic thunderstorm. This time we hear her speak. You. He chose you. Yet your light flickers. Do not fear. I will protect you. And in a flash, we see Jane is the one who wakes up in a hospital bed. She's clearly several months along into chemotherapy. She's bald, thin, frail. Darcy is standing next to her bed. She's the one that just woke Jane up. She has in her arms a few large Norse mythology books, as well as a stack of what looks like research papers. She sets them down, and we see the hospital room is full of the stuff. A laptop, piles of books, notes, and sketches. It's clear Jane has been working a lot from her spot in this chemo ward. Darcy takes the time to look over all of this with worry, while Jane cracks open the book and begins scribbling some new notes. Offhandedly, she talks about what she's writing, how much humanity could benefit if they could just crack the Bifrost. Darcy suggests that she takes a break. You're chasing something your body can't keep up with. But Jane is sick of hearing that. I don't need my body to keep up, I just need it to last long enough. Long enough? I'm not going to spend my final days just wasting away. I want to leave something behind. So I mattered. You understand, don't you? Darcy? But Darcy isn't paying attention as the sky outside is filling up with lightning. People gather and stare up at the huge storm and start running in panic as bolts begin to rain down. The approaching clouds twist in shape until they take the form of a gigantic goddess. The goddess reaches down, pointing her finger towards the hospital, towards Jane. Chaos erupts outside, winds whipping all about, and the window shatters. Darcy throws herself over Jane to protect her, but Jane seems oddly calm. Darcy, relax. I think this is for me. And with her frail, bony arm, Jane reaches up a finger to reciprocate. We cut to a shot of an open field, New Asgard. The chunks of Mjolnir, still lying in the field where it was destroyed, begin to rumble and shake. Lifting off the grass, they hesitate for a moment, then blast off into the sky. We see a shot of Valkyrie sitting behind her desk. She looks up, spotting the pieces fly by. Confused, she reaches for the sword next to her. At the hospital, Darcy is screaming, but Jane seems unbothered. Just as her finger touches the finger of this storm goddess, the pieces of Mjolnir fly into place, colliding with them as well. There's an enormous thunder crack and a flash of lightning, and when the light fades, standing atop the hospital bed is Jane as the mighty Thor. Blonde hair and Asgardian armor, she's holding the reconstructed Mjolnir. The giant storm has disappeared. Breaking the tension, Darcy asks what the hell is going on, but before Jane can respond, a chorus of screams echo from outside. Several buildings are crumbling in the aftermath of the storm that just struck. Whipping around Mjolnir, Jane takes off, flying to save them. We get a scene of Jane saving civilians, flying them out of harm's way as debris is falling, all while laughing up a storm at how much fun it is to fly, to feel healthy again. She throws Mjolnir through a falling piece of rubble, shattering it and preventing the people beneath from being crushed. After saving these people and ensuring that the buildings are safe, she drops off a little girl on the ground. The girl thanks her and asks who she is. She starts to say Dr. Jane Foster, but somebody in the crowd yells, "It's Thor!" And before she can react, the crowd starts chanting, "Thor! Thor! Thor!" Jane smiles. Not exactly accurate, but sure, you can call me Thor if you want. As we zoom in on Jane's smile, we smash cut to a different smile. The cruel, snarling grin of Gorr as blood splatters across his face. He's inside a shining marble pagoda somewhere on an alien world. He slices another goddess with a necro sword and sidesteps a blast of energy from the largest god there. Off in the corner, several mortal servants cower in fear, and all the remaining gods rush Gorr at once. We watch as he brutally cuts down the first few, then, getting a better handle on the sword, starts to toy with the remaining gods. He doesn't go for killing blows right away, instead slashing their arms and legs, letting them tumble to the ground and look up at him in fear before dealing the finishing blow. As Gorr butchers the last of these gods, an entire dozen now laying at his feet, he reaches down, taking some of their blood and adding it to the tear-like marks on his face. He turns to leave, but one of the mortal servants calls out to him. "How could you do this? We are nothing without our gods." Gorr turns around, just in time for the servant to stab him in the side with a small knife. The necro sword flares up, his black cloak rising to skewer this servant, but Gorr stops it. He calmly removes the knife from his side, tossing it to the ground, and delicately caresses the servant's face with his hand. She starts to cry, and Gorr looks into her eyes. You were born into servitude, your whole life spent doing their bidding, and I have removed your chains. Why are you shedding tears for those who enslaved you? I loved them, and they loved us. No. Gorr wipes away her tear, leaving a smudge of blood on her cheek. You must escape the lies of those who promise to love you better tomorrow. Gorr turns to leave again, but the mortal calls out one more time. Where are you going now? And Gorr smiles again. Hey, just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for watching. I really enjoyed putting this script together, and I hope you're having fun with it. If you are, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. It's the best way that I can know that you want to support the channel, and that you want to see more what-if type stories like this. And if you have a specific Marvel movie you'd like me to rewrite, or anything else really, be sure to tell me down in those comments. Okay, back to the movie. We cut back to Thor and Sif, who are now searching through an ancient Asgardian archive planet, the Havamal Runic Archive, to find anything they can about the black scourge mark that made Falagar go mad. It's clear Sif has a better handle on what they're looking for, and Thor is just kind of poking around idly, so he strikes up some conversation. I don't remember you being so ruthless in battle. Oh, I don't think I'm the one that's changed. Sif asks Thor where his fire went. What does he fight for now? Thor doesn't know, but Sif does. I fight for Valhalla, the glory that awaits me there. With so many Asgardians lost, I want to have stories when I see my comrades again. That's the reason I need to fight. Thor thinks on this, and is about to reply when he gets a notification. He has a little communication device that the Guardians issued him. There's a report from a nearby planet. Someone just slaughtered a small pantheon using a powerful blade cloaked in black. Hearing this, Thor thinks it sounds like the Necro Sword, which he heard stories about as a child. He tosses the communicator to Sif and starts sifting through books until he finds the right one. He cracks it open and finds a section on the Necro Sword. He starts to read. It's a corruptive power. It burns away life. But Sif interrupts him. There was more to the message on his communicator. The madman with the Necro Sword left the planet and is heading to Earth to kill Thor. We jump to the next scene as Jane and Gorr are mid-fight in the skies above New Asgard. She's trying to figure out who he is and why he wants to kill her, while Gorr is simply amused by her. You may not be the mighty Thor, but you clearly possess the power of a god. No, you can ask any of the adoring citizens down there. I've been the mighty Thor for a few months now. Of course, you're not their protector. You leech off their praise. You're a parasite of their love, a false idol. All deities are the same. You'll abandon them as soon as they no longer serve you. Maybe I should introduce you to a good friend of mine, Dr. Selvig. He can give you a little mythology refresher. I'm not a god. I just used to date one. At this point, Gorr catches Jane off guard and is about to slash at her neck with the Necro Sword, but he stops just inches from her. You are mortal? It's at this point that the Bifrost lights up and Mjolnir flies out of Jane's hand, and Thor catches it, very surprised. Without Mjolnir, Jane crumples to her knees and reverts back to her chemo-ridden body. Thor has only a moment to notice Mjolnir and Jane before Gorr lunges at him. Gorr hacks into Thor and yells out to Jane, "Do you see? Your god returns only to take his blessings back from you." Thor retaliates with both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker and manages to land a major blow, but the Necro Sword heals Gorr's wounds. Thor tries to get a grip on the situation. You're the madman who's been terrorizing Midgard with his stolen blade? Who are you? Why do you seek my head? Don't mistake me, Thunder God. Midgard is not the object of my vengeance. That's a privilege only you immortals deserve. My name is Gorr, and this day I shall be your butcher. They battle for a minute, and we see Gorr slashes at Thor's side with the necrosword. As the blackness eats away at him, his eyes flare up with lightning, and he starts to revel in the combat. This is the first serious fight since Thanos, and it's almost like he's having fun. The prospect of potentially dying here against a powerful enemy, saving the Earth, is this what Thor's been craving? Has he been desiring a deadly battle that will lead him to Valhalla? It seems like Thor and Gorr are about to kill one another when Valkyrie shows up, along with the military forces of New Asgard. Thor is snapped out of his battle trance and goes to help Jane. Now facing down a small army, Gorr flares up the necrosword, prepared to fight all of them. He plants his feet, but then he lowers his weapon. There are Earthlings amidst your ranks, Ex-Guardian. Mortals, fighting for you. Valkyrie steps up next to Thor and responds to Gorr. Immigrants to New Asgard. They're every bit as brave as their brothers and sisters in arms. No, not bravery. Foolishness. But I refuse to slay my mortal brethren. At this point, Jane pipes up, leaning on Thor. If you really plan to kill every god in the universe, you're gonna end up killing some mortals too. So why don't you rethink this stupid plan of yours? At that, Gorr has a realization. You are correct. Thank you, Lady Thor. I promise you, when my work is complete, you will see that I was right. Thor throws Mjolnir at Gorr, but he uses the necrosword to teleport away into a portal of shadows. At this, Jane stumbles over. Thor asks what's wrong with her, but she passes out. He says that she needs a physician. She needs a doctor. We cut to the Sanctum Sanctorum, where Doctor Strange has several spells over the body of Jane. Thor is following him around, asking what's wrong with her. Why was she out there? And Strange is very annoyed by him. He says he will figure it out, but first he needs to stabilize her. Thor wants to help, and Strange says he can start by explaining why that thing is following him around. Thor turns around to see Mjolnir has been floating behind him this whole time. He turns back to Strange, who has used the distraction to warp Jane away. We can have a little funny bit here where Thor tries to juke off Mjolnir for a little bit of levity. He then walks to the waiting room where Valkyrie is sitting. He asks if Mjolnir followed them all the way here, and she says yes. It was really obvious. He makes a passing mention to his fake eye, and he has a blind spot now, but they have a serious talk. Thor asks what has been happening here on Earth, and Valkyrie explains how the pieces of Mjolnir just flew off one day, and for the next few months, this new Thor had been flying around. She never took off her helmet, so finding out she was Jane Foster was a pretty big surprise. Valkyrie mentions she had talked to her a few times, and she's looking for a queen. Running Asgard by herself is not easy. Thor awkwardly apologizes for leaving her with the responsibility. Doctor Strange finally comes out to speak with them. Jane has breast cancer, and it is terminal. The odd thing is that her body is clearly showing the signs of chemotherapy, but the tumor itself seems unaffected. Thor speculates that the hammer's enchantment imbues people with his power. It should erase mortal illnesses, as well as their unnecessary medicines. Strange posits that, perhaps because cancer is the body attacking itself, Mjolnir's Asgardian magic considers the tumor part of her body and leaves it alone. Using Mjolnir is erasing the positive effects of chemo. It's killing her faster. Thor is very upset by this. He wants to leave immediately to find Gorr, to find someone to take out this anger on, but Strange stops him. There's more they need to talk about. He points to the hammer, which is still floating there. Mjolnir has always been bound to its wielder, and Odin's enchantment gave it the ability to judge worthiness. But after Hela smashed it, something was released from it. Something that has an agenda of its own. Thor asks, what is this being? And Strange says, you tell me. Putting one hand on Thor's chest and the other on Mjolnir, he knocks Thor out of his body, back into the dream plane, the colorful storm. Inside this space is the glowing woman made of lightning, and Thor finally has a talk with her. She reaches out to him, Odinson, I have missed you. Oh, I missed you too. And you would be... I am Tempest, the eternal storm, the cosmic thunder. You know not of my history? From here, Tempest gives us some insight. Eons ago, a cosmic storm threatened to tear apart galaxies. Odin was approached by the frost giants for assistance in dealing with the storm. He chose to take a look, and he brought his daughter Hela with him. The storm raged, and Odin was able to capture it and contain it briefly. He asked the dwarves of Nidavellir to craft him a hammer, a weapon capable of containing the storm. Odin then named the storm the God Tempest and trapped it inside the hammer. He then named the hammer Mjolnir, the Thunderer, and that is who she is. This woman is the God Tempest. Alright, so what do you want from me? If you're angry with Odin, my father has already passed. I held a deep contempt for your father, but also for Hela. They kept me captive. But you, Thor Odinson, we had a certain affinity. You too were born a thunder god. I came to appreciate how your lightning protected and empowered instead of devastated. You taught me what it meant to be worthy. I'm truly sorry. I never even knew you were there with me all those centuries. But I knew, and when your sister released me, shattering my vessel, my freedom was bittersweet. I was lonely, but you had evolved past the need for me. And further yet, even if you never spoke of it, you cared for another. Another? Foster. You love her, and she was dying. So I chose to intervene. Thor explains that she's actually killing Jane, and Tempest says if that's the case, then she will stay at Thor's side again instead. However, because she chose to return to the hammer, she cannot choose who wields her. Thor will need to convince Jane not to use Mjolnir anymore. But before Thor can respond, Tempest is pulled away, and the dream ends. Thor wakes up and finds that Jane left to go find Gorr, taking Mjolnir with her. She used Stormbreaker to open up the Bifrost. Laying nearby is Thor's communicator, reading a recent distress signal. Thor thanks Doctor Strange, then he and Valkyrie chase after her. We cut to Jane as she arrives on an alien planet above a raging ocean. Down below, there's some sort of structure, like a man-made island of stone and steel crumbling into the water. On it, there are countless people screaming for help, trying not to fall into the sea. Jane catches a few of them and they explain, a gray man with a black blade just appeared here, slaughtered their patron deity who protected this place, stole the contents of their vault, and left. Without their god's power, this ocean shrine has no power source and is going to sink. Jane acts quickly, catching everyone falling and carrying them to the center. Then flying down beneath this island, she tries to catch it, flying upwards as it plummets down towards the water. She struggles beneath the weight, her eyes flaring up with lightning, but it's too much for her. She can't stop this. Until suddenly, the island stops in place on its own. Don't worry, the whole hero thing gets easier with experience. Thor is there behind her, and he's supporting the island, stopping it from dropping. Jane is about to thank him when the island cracks. All the force focused on Thor isn't structurally stable, and it's gonna fall apart. A few people fall through the cracks towards the ocean, but Valkyrie swoops by on her Pegasus, catching them. Keep holding it, I've got this. Jane flies off, up around to the metallic roads that wrap around this island. Bending them into place, she wraps them around the structure, and with a blast of concentrated lightning, welds them together. The island stabilizes, and Thor slowly starts to lower it down into the ocean. Jane flies back down next to him, and he is impressed. How did you think of that? Maybe experience is overrated. It's clear that Thor is physically stronger, but Jane is smarter and more creative with her powers. The two complement one another. They make a good team. Just as they get the island settled, Valkyrie flags down our two Thors. You two should get a room already. But first, we've got an issue up here. It turns out that this island wasn't just the home of a god, it was a special facility designed to protect a powerful artifact created by the Watchers in an ancient cosmic war, a machine known as the Ultimate Nullifier. It's the perfect weapon, able to completely erase something from existence. People, objects, even concepts. Theoretically, Gorr could wipe out every god in an instant. But the Nullifier isn't like the Infinity Stones. It can't create things, it can't change reality, it can only destroy. And because of that, if there is any uncertainty in the mind of whoever fires it, they could risk wiping out far more than their desired target, with no way to get it back. In the original film, Gorr went to go see Eternity, which I think was an awful decision. It was a complete waste of him, especially turning an important character in Marvel cosmology into the Dragon Balls, a wish MacGuffin. But another benefit of slotting out Eternity for the Ultimate Nullifier, there isn't an out for the heroes at the end of the movie. They can't just make a good wish on Eternity to save things. They need to stop Gorr before he can fire the Nullifier. Luckily for our heroes, the Ultimate Nullifier can only be fired from its designated firing station, located outside the World Tree in the empty space known as the Shadow Realm. This is because the Nullifier needs to draw on the antimatter that fills out that realm. The Bifrost won't reach the Shadow Realm, so it's unlikely Gorr can teleport directly there himself. Thor, Jane, and Valkyrie find a ship and head out together. That night, Jane is standing on the deck, looking up at the stars. Thor joins her. He explains what Doctor Strange said about her cancer, that using Mjolnir is killing her. Jane lets out a sigh. She had pretty much figured that out already. Then why do you choose to throw away your life? Is my power truly that intoxicating? This hammer, it lets me use my time how I want to use it, making a difference. Leaving a mark. Then I think I'm jealous. Despite your circumstance, you have clarity. My friend, Stark, he gave his life to save all of the universe. If he isn't there, he deserves a seat in Valhalla. I think that might be what I'm destined for. You're talking with a lot of finality. Oh god, I sound like Darcy. Perhaps I am being final. I have no brother, no family. I know I'm not meant for the throne, even if I was born for it. All I want is to see all of them again. To meet them in the halls of Valhalla. Until then, I'm just idling about the universe. Jane takes a minute, then speaks up again. It was the cancer. I'm sorry, I should have told you then. I ended things with you, and it turned out to be benign. I was going to reach out, but it came back, malignant. And at that point, why didn't you tell me? You save people. You keep entire worlds safe. I couldn't let myself burden you. You're too important. You have never once been a burden on me, Jane Foster. I spent the last 5 years letting my failures define me, but I don't want to be defined by my achievements either. The only thing I want is more time with those that I love. Thor convinces Jane not to transform again, as it will kill her. He says that he will face Gorr alone, it's better that way. Jane wants to come, but Thor assures her she should spend the time she has left with Darcy, with her family, with who she loves. They share a kiss, and Jane finally agrees. Thor stops the ship in place at the edge of the Shadow Realm and teleports her back to Earth with the Bifrost. He leaves her with a small communicator and gives her a kiss on the head as she falls asleep in her hospital bed. He then teleports back to Valkyrie with both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir, and they fly forward into the Shadow Realm, a space devoid of all color. They discuss the plan. Valkyrie will disarm the Nullifier, while Thor fights Gorr. As their ship approaches the small planetoid, we see Gorr meditating over the Necrosword, a slain god at his feet, the Nullifier on its charging station behind him. He's thinking of his family, all his fallen brethren. He thinks of his wife, his daughter, the god he dedicated his life to, who refused to save his only kin. Thunder crackles in the distance, awakening him. Reaching down into the blood of the god at his feet, Gorr marks his face one more time. Thor and Valkyrie enter the chamber, and Gorr asks, "Where's Lady Thor?" Thor says she's not what he needs to worry about, but Gorr disagrees. She's a kindred spirit who was led to suffer her mortal disease without help from the gods. By grasping at your scraps, she's only been made sicker. I understand her pain. I want her to know that she is not alone. You're right, she's not alone, and you're never speaking another word to her. Gorr plants the Necrosword into the ground, and it expands to protect the Ultimate Nullifier. That really is your problem. At the heart of everything, you gods are always so confident, so arrogant. Raising his hand up into the air, the ground behind them cracks open, and an absolutely gigantic flying serpent rises up into the sky, a black mark scorched across its head. This is Jormungandr, the World Serpent. Gorr discovered him roaming the Shadow Realm, and now holds the great beast under his control. Leaping up onto Jormungandr's head, Gorr rides it into battle, smashing Thor off of the planetoid. As Thor tries to battle the World Snake, Valkyrie attempts to remove the Necrosword. But as she touches it, the black cloak crawls up her arms and reaches into her mind. She lets out a scream as the blackness changes in shape. Out from the ground, corpses begin to rise from the black, and the Valkyrie staggers back in fear. Using her memories, the Necrosword resurrects her dead sisters, the Valkyries. At the front of the force, leading the charge, is the Valkyrie she was in love with, the one we saw her cradling when Hela slaughtered them. This corpse taunts her. "You've evaded your fate. We lay long dead beneath your feet. It's time you joined us. It is time you joined your sisters in hell." They chase after her on their undead Pegasus mounts. Flying around in space, Thor uses both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir to battle Jormungandr, blasting the snake with lightning and smashing its teeth apart. Valkyrie manages to evade her sisters long enough to make it back to the spaceship. Manning the cannons, she blasts them out of the sky, gritting her teeth as she watches her sisters die a second time. Tearing himself away from Jormungandr, Thor finally manages to defeat the beast, using his hammer to launch asteroids at the creature from a distance, blinding it. Valkyrie just barely shoots the last enemy out of the sky, but their leader leaps from her mount, clashing swords with her. This is the one who wears the face of the one she loved. Valkyrie grimaces as they sword fight. "I was your sister, but no more. I have a different fate. As King of Asgard, I command you now. Go to your rest." And she pierces the heart of the zombie. As she stands victorious, Gorr leaps from the dying Jormungandr, summoning the Necrosword and slicing Valkyrie across her back, incapacitating her. Thor lands and faces down Gorr alone. "You were wrong about the gods. I once believed myself above the mortals, but now I live in service of Midgard and her people. Please, your service is only to win their worship, their praise. It's nothing more than service to your godly ego. When your back is pressed against the wall, you will always make the same choice. Gods do not care about mortals." The two clash, Thor using the full power of his thunder and both weapons, smashing with Gorr's increasingly terrifying Necrosword. Gorr slashes into Thor several times, and though Thor manages to hit Gorr with lightning, the Necrosword fills the wound. Striking Thor in his bad eye, Gorr then knocks Mjolnir from his hand, and he topples to the ground. Now defenseless, Thor lies on the ground as Gorr wraps the blade in burning black, preparing to pierce Thor's heart. He raises the point, and we see Thor's face. It's calm, content. This is what he wanted, after all. Just then, a bolt of lightning strikes Gorr from above. While he's disoriented, Mjolnir smacks him in the face, and Jane catches it. Off in the distance, we see Sif, still wounded, leaning against the mast of a much smaller ship. She brought Jane here. Thor, tired and weak, he tries to protest. He's pointing out the blood trickling from Jane's mouth, but she tells him, It's no good living for those I love if they end up dying too. Now, filled with new resolve, Thor stands. He is bleeding from his eye and Jane is bleeding from her mouth. They're both weak. It's a good thing they make such a great team. The two fight Gorr together. Now with Jane by his side, Thor is able to cause more frequent damage to Gorr. Between the slashes of Stormbreaker, the lightning, and the strikes from Mjolnir, we see Gorr's body is being torn apart, and it's getting harder and harder for the Necro Blade to keep healing him. Thor lands a strike to his chest, and Jane hits Stormbreaker with Mjolnir, cleaving it deeper into him. But as Gorr winds up for another attack, Jane blocks and lets out a cough of blood. She drops her guard, and Gorr lands his attack, cutting into her side. Jane topples to the ground, and as she drops Mjolnir, the visage fades away. She transforms back into her mortal form. Gorr stumbles away, and Thor drops to his knees, cradling Jane's head. He tries to comfort her, but she says it's okay, and that he has to live, for her sake. Thor sheds a tear, but Gorr interrupts them. Save your false tears, Thunder God. You would weep for a mortal? Dying of a mortal disease you could never contract? It's a mockery. But Thor just ignores him. He tries to put Mjolnir back in her hand, but nothing happens. Thor yells, Tempest! What are you doing? Give her my power again! Stay by her side! But Tempest's voice rings in his head. She tells him she cannot. That is not how your father's enchantment works. I am bound inside this vessel once again. I cannot change that. My father's enchantment? If that's what it takes, I am Odinson, am I not? Tempest tries to stop him, but he doesn't listen. I was blessed to have you at my side, Tempest. Every day you served me faithfully. Please, forgive me. Gorr, Necro Sword still in hand, is intrigued. He asks, Thor, what are you doing? Thor places his hand on Jane's heart. You can't always hold the hammer, but you won't need to. Whosoever holds my heart, if she be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Gorr screams and tries to intervene, but a massive bolt of lightning erupts from the two of them. Stepping out from it is Jane. She's wearing the armor of Thor and holding Mjolnir, but she's no longer wearing the helmet, and her hair is her natural brunette. She's not wielding Thor's power anymore. This is her power now. Behind her is Tempest, now free from the hammer. Jane flies at Gorr, who's stupefied. They clash a few times, but she quickly overpowers him with a barrage of lightning. She tells him to disable the nullifier. He only asks, why? Why would a god give up his divinity? Why would Thor Odinson save a mortal at the cost of himself? You were wrong, Gorr. The god of thunder knew love. He knew compassion, as do so many others. Now do yourself a favor. Don't let this mistake be your legacy. Taken aback, a single tear streams down Gorr's face, and as he wipes it away, he removes some of the blood that marks his cheek. His ideology is crumbling. Summoning the Necro Sword again, he turns around. Hear me, Jane Foster, goddess of thunder. I mark this place the final resting place of Thor Odinson and Gorr the God Butcher. But it shall not be a mass grave. Take your allies and leave me to my duty. Understanding, Jane picks up the body of Thor. Valkyrie's eyes flutter open, and she thinks she sees the face of her lost love, but it fades away to the face of Tempest, who is carrying her to the ship. The two share a look, and the whole group make it to Sif at the ship. And one more thing, Gorr calls out. Jane stops and looks back. Pray for me? Pray for yourself. The last thing we see is Gorr's smirk as he plunges the Necro Sword into the ultimate nullifier. It cracks open and white light fills the screen as it erupts all around him. The white light fades and we see Thor's hand reaching out. Something flies into it, but the camera zooms out. It's not Mjolnir, it is a simple wood-cutting axe. He says thank you to Korg, and to toss him his water, too. He takes a drink, and we see he has his eye patch again. He starts chopping wood, and carries a pack of it up to a shed. As he's walking, he passes Stormbreaker, which is planted into the ground and has sprouted a few little flowers. A group of kids approach him with sticks and want to play. He pretends to sword fight them, and one whacks him in the leg, and as he recoils, it hurts. Thor is mortal. With a clap of thunder, Jane lands nearby and tells the kids to shoo. She hands Thor the fake ID from the first movie. She can't believe she still has it. I'll need to get a new picture, with the missing eye and everything, but Donald Blake still looks pretty good for 1500. You don't look a day over 1,000, she teases him. She does have to go, though. The Guardians need help with something. She asks him if he wants to tag along, but Thor is uninterested. It's okay, I can use Stormbreaker, I'm sure you're still worthy. That's alright, I have some more wood to chop. Okay, well, I need to check in with Tempest before I go. Something about her coronation? Maybe I'll just leave Mjolnir here, in case you change your mind. And Jane takes off. Our final shot is Thor looking at Mjolnir, smiling, and turning towards the pile of wood. We slowly zoom in on the hammer, and it just barely starts to shake, as if it's being summoned, and we smash cut to black. Roll credits. Of course, this is a very simplified script. A real film would have a lot of smaller scenes to expand upon the characters and their relationships, but I think I accomplished everything I set out to do here. Thor finds purpose and fulfillment, he finds love, he no longer has the burden of his birthright hanging over his head. Jane gets to live a life as the mighty Thor, making a difference as both a doctor and a goddess. Gorr realized the error of his ways, Valkyrie found herself a queen, and the door is still open for Thor to return, wielding Mjolnir if the need arises. And I can't think of a better way to say farewell to the Thunder God, at least for now. Stay frosty.